Hello and welcome back to the Odds Now YouTube channel for the latest edition of the EFL Betting Show with myself, Matt Hill, and my regular co-host, EFL guru, Gab Sutton. And if you're watching for the first time, please do stick around and give us a go. Basically, how it's going to work is over the next half an hour or so, myself and Gab are going to run through this weekend's upcoming matches from across the Championship, League One, League Two, pick out three each, which we like the look of in terms of a bet, and hopefully point you in the direction of a few winners. That is something that I didn't manage to do last weekend, unfortunately, but Gab thankfully propped me up. I think last week I started the show by saying that I'd had two winners and you'd blanked, and we flipped roles last week, Gab. I blanked in painful fashion. I had Norwich and under 3.5 goals, and I think they conceded a 94th minute equaliser, which was a bit of a kick in the teeth. But thankfully, you came to the party and saved the day with Shrewsbury. I think you had them double chance against Rotherham, and they actually went and won that. So they would have been, what, about 4-1 probably to win that game, 3 or 4-1. But you had the 6-5 double chance, and you had Notts County to win 2-0 against Morecambe. They never let you down, do they, Notts County?
Oh, it's so reliable, Notts County. I'm almost tempted to have them every week, the win 2-0.
I've already, to be honest, before we've even discussed our picks, I kind of pencil them in as yours and then just delete if needed. And I have deleted this week because you've gone down a different path, as the viewers will soon see. But yeah, please do hit that subscribe button if you're new to Odds Now and you like getting your card marked ahead of the betting weekend. We've also got a Premier League betting show, which you can go and check out. And we have a new podcast launching next Monday as well. So it's a great time to subscribe here on the channel. But without any further ado, we'll dive into this weekend's action. We start in the Championship. No pick for me in the Championship this weekend, but Gab, you do have one in the second tier. So straight over to you. You've going for Plymouth double chance. Now they are away at Blackburn. They're 5-4 to win or draw. Yep. And I don't think this needs much explanation from a logic perspective. You have a team in Plymouth who just seem rejuvenated in recent weeks, and a team in Blackburn who've had quite a hectic week.
Yeah, I think Plymouth Argyle are much improved defensively of late. They recruited really well in January. Katic in particular looks like a fantastic addition. And I think the other thing is just Miron Muslic. Out took a few games to get going, but I think that that FA Cup victory over Liverpool, the runaway leaders of the Premier League, and the 5-1 thumping of Millwall with Callum Wright and Ryan Hardy and Mustafa Bundu all looking in really good form. And their odds against to avoid defeat. And I think I'm feeling like I don't want to be too reactionary based on one league game, because Argyle have still got a lot of work to do to beat the drop. But it does feel like they're a completely different team to the one that we saw before Miron Muslic took charge. So I think he's shown outstanding leadership qualities, and yeah, I'm willing to take the chance on it, given that although Blackburn did win at West Brom in midweek, this is still a bit of a transitional period for Rovers after using John Eustace. They are on the hunt for a new manager. So yeah, I'm happy to go with Plymouth Argyle to avoid defeat in this one.
You touch on the new signings, Gab, for Plymouth, and to me, it's as much about their character and their mentality as it is about their ability. They've strengthened obviously quite significantly at the back. And you say, there's a marked improvement in their defensive numbers. But they just seem to he seems to have brought in players that love the art of defending. I know that sounds a bit cliche, but I saw the Ukrainian international whose name I don't want to butcher, but I saw him. That's it. I've seen him. I've seen him celebrating tackles like goals, and I think something like that, when you're in a relegation battle, it resonates with the fans, doesn't it? And I just think it's lifted the mood around the place, because he had a little bit of a sticky start, didn't he, Muslic? But very quickly turned things around. He comes across so well. I know there was a lot of belief amongst Plymouth fans going into that game at Millwall, where they were 5-2 underdogs and absolutely battered them, as you say. And maybe the market just hasn't quite caught up yet, or maybe they're just giving a little bit more caution with it being such a small sample size. But I think you're right. This John Eustace thing, we can't move on without discussing it. Obviously, it's been one of the stories of this week. Sure. From a Blackburn perspective, so tough to lose your manager when you're having such a good season, really. But this is a wider issue, isn't it, within Blackburn as a club?
Yeah, I think I watched John Eustace's first interview with Derby County, and I often find that when a manager has made a surprising move, i.e. from one club that's higher in the table to another club that's either in a lower league or lower in the table, often what they say about the reasons why they've joined the new club can be a little bit of a clue into the reasons for leaving the old club. And I think one of the first things John Eustace said was the vision that Derby County had, and I think he mentioned the state, the facilities as well look really strong. So a couple of reasons there that, you know, maybe things that he wasn't happy with at Blackburn Rovers, and as much as Lowe did a really good job in the interim period to oversee that 2-0 victory at West Brom, I still would stick by the feeling that this is going to be an awkward period for Blackburn Rovers while they search for a new manager. So yeah, I think the value is with Argyle, but yeah, it's certainly a blow for them to lose Eustace, because he was doing a wonderful job there.
He was. Be very interested to see how they finish the season. Blackburn, obviously, a bit of a turbulent period coming up for them, and maybe Plymouth can take advantage at 5-4 with the double chance draw on side. My first pick is in League One, and I'm going to Wigan versus Stockport, where I'm going to back the visitors to win with over 1.5 goals in the match. This is just shy of 2-1 with Betfair. And Stockport, well, their winning run did come to an end in midweek at Bristol Rovers. They were held to a 1-1 draw, but prior to that, they'd had 5 successive victories and were flying up the table. And I think automatic promotion is still very much within reach for them. I think they're only 4 or 5 points behind Wycombe now in second place, who obviously have a few question marks over themselves with recent managerial changes and other bits and pieces. So I think Stockport, they'll have been disappointed to drop the 2 points in midweek at Bristol Rovers, but I had a little bit of a dig into that game, and I think they were well in control of it until a late sort of lapse in concentration, which is bound to happen over the course of a season. Dave Challoner afterwards was quite reflective and philosophical. He wasn't getting too downbeat about it. He was still really pleased with the control that they had in the game. I saw a lot of Bristol Rovers supporters saying that they thought Stockport were the best team they'd seen at the Memorial Ground this season, which is high praise, obviously. And I still think that even when you do, winning runs are going to come to an end, but it's all about the manner in which they come to an end. And I didn't feel like this was a bad way for the winning run to end. It was still a strong performance, a frustrating couple of drop points, but nothing to make me think that Stockport are suddenly going to go on a slide or anything like that. And they visit a Wigan team this season who've just not been that good on their own turf. I think they've only had 4 home wins all season. And while they're a very solid team defensively, generally speaking, they really do lack creativity. And I don't think that's been helped by the fact of losing Thelo Asgard in the January window to Luton, probably their star creative player. I think it's fair to say they're scoring roughly a goal a game, maybe even a little bit less. So that is... it's frustrating for Wigan. I do like Sean Maloney. I would like to see him turn things around there and really get Wigan going up the right way. I think the club have been quite patient with him, actually, because it's not all been roses this season. But I just think where these two teams are at the moment, I really do think that draw in midweek has maybe just added a little bit of juice to the Stockport's price here. And I think that they are quite, at the moment, quite comfortably a better side than Wigan. Now, there's about a 6-5 about the away win here, which is good enough on its own merit. But I do really like Stockport in terms of goals. They have the highest XG in the division in League One. So even though they're, punching well with the top runners in this league for goals scored, they could easily have even more. And I think the key to Stockport this season has been the strength in depth, really. I feel like they have 2 good players in every position, and that is so crucial over the course of a long EFL season. And even though they might have to rotate in midfield this week, in comes a player I'm very familiar with in Owen Moxon, will come into the centre in midfield. And, I think that's a great pickup for them as well. Definitely has the ability and class to slide into that team and add to it as well. So, yeah, I'm a big Stockport fan. I like getting them on side wherever I can. And I think Wigan at home, they're very opposable this season. So that's the thinking behind that one. 9-5 feels like an attractive price. And obviously the only sort of Stockport winning result against me there is the 1-0. So I'll take my chances there in search of eking out a little bit of extra value with a very strong attacking unit in Stockport.
Well, I must say you've made a great case for it. And just to sort of add to that, I like that they've got a sort of a real variety of threats, in the sense that they've got the physicality and target man presence of Kyle Wootton, who seems to almost surprise Stockport County fans with the way he rises to each division and sort of makes that step up. They've got Isaac Oliofe, who's
big fan Big fan of him.
Very
Yeah.
athletic forward, carries a real threat in behind. They've got Jack Diamond out wide, who brings lots of quality, great delivery at Bristol Rovers. Owen Mox in midfield, who you mentioned, will bring lots of energy and dynamism and some of those Hollywood passes as well. So yeah, I can see Stockport County carrying a threat at Wigan, who have been a hugely disappointing season. I really thought they had some foundations to kick on this year, Matt. So definitely back to the drawing board as far as Wigan are concerned. But I like the price that you've got there with that 95. So
just before we move on, Gab, Maloney and Wigan, where are you at with him? Do you think he's the man to take them forward, or do you think is maybe a change is going to happen there at some point?
Yeah, it's a great question. I quite like the fact that Wigan Athletic fans, the ones that I've spoken to, seem to be very level-headed about it and willing to support the manager just because he did some really good work in difficult times for the club to develop young players and generate saleable assets that made a huge difference to the sort of financial sustainability of the club. And so clearly there's a connection there, and Maloney's and certainly that carries something. But they've also got to look at it and say, it has been a disappointing season. It has been a step backwards this year. So I'm going to sit on the fence with that one. I can kind of see both sides.
I could sense that. Yeah, I'll let you off because it is a difficult one to assess, really. And I think it's just fair to conclude, if this season peters out the way it looks like it's going to be a big start to next season for Sean Maloney. They really do need to offer more next season, I think, for a club of that stature in League One. And some of the players they have in their ranks, you'd like to think they can perform a little bit better in 25-26, but we shall see. Back over to you then, Gab, for your dabbling in League One for your next pick. This one raised my eyebrow a little bit, I must say. Leyton Orient not taken on lightly this season, but you're going to side with Lincoln on the double chance. Even money about the Imps getting some kind of result at Brisbane Road. Talk me through this one.
Yeah, Leyton Orient have been on a brilliant run. I definitely see them as a top 10 team in League One.
Yeah.
I think they were very underrated in the general football public in October or November, when they were sort of shading the territory in most of their games, barring a few exceptions, and then it started to click for them in the final third around October or November time, and since then they've gone on this great run. But I'm almost wondering if it's gone a little bit too far the other way in terms of the traders, because they're facing a Lincoln City side who, they're not in the bloom of health, Lincoln City, but they have only lost one of their last 6. They're still in the top half of the wealthiest ever iteration of League One, and they've made enormous strides in the grand scheme of things. And I just wonder, Matt, whether this sort of Leyton Orient are big favourites and Lincoln City are the underdog. I don't know if it's quite right, and so I think that the chances of to get a 50-50 chance of Lincoln City either winning this game or drawing, given that it would have landed in 5 of their last 6. They have got some solid foundations there as well. They have been able to tick off points even when they haven't necessarily been at their free-flowing best. And they've got a midfielder in Ethan Arahan, who I think on his day is one of the best midfielders in League One. I'm kind of feeling like Lincoln City might be able to get something there. So that's my thinking for backing that one at evens.
Yeah, interesting, because Lincoln, like you say, they have floated around the playoff picture in League One for the last couple of years. They're very well drilled and organised side with a few injuries in the ranks at the moment, as you kind of touched upon there. Orient, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because, like you say, they wouldn't have been considered playoff contenders up until very recently, I think, by most. Is there a mindset shift there, I wonder, with the players now? Do they now have to deal with the expectation of, we are odds-on favourites to win this game now? You lose that surprise factor a little bit, I guess, as a dark horse, and suddenly it is a different level of scrutiny that you're under. I think there's a lot on Richie Wellens in this period and his managerial experience of just keeping his players focused on the task in hand. And he is somebody that I trust implicitly to do that. I think he's one of the best managers in the EFL, to be honest. I also wonder with what impact this cup run has. Obviously, went out on their shield against Manchester City and got great plaudits for it. But we see it so often when a League One or League Two club has a game like that, to look forward to. It can be difficult to switch back to the league. But I know they've gone and beaten Mansfield since, but I don't think much of Mansfield at the moment, to be honest. And I think this is a much bigger test. I think you're right. So I'm interested. I'm not sure if I'd get quite as far as betting it, but I see where you're going, and I wouldn't be opposed to taking Orient on in future weeks.
The other factor I would say is that, let's say Lincoln City put it together a well-organised performance and are able to kind of solidify, because as much as we've questioned them, under Michael Scabala, their defensive record has been very strong. And even this season, they've only conceded 35 goals in 30 games. And so they've only lost a third of their games. So to get a 50-50 chance on them avoiding defeat isn't bad. And also, I think that if they're able to maybe stop Leyton Orient's more advanced players, Orient have got Jordan Brown and Darren Pratley at the base of midfield. And while I really like Pratley and Brown as sort of destructive midfielders, Pratley's really experienced and Brown covers lots of ground. I don't think either of them are hugely creative. So I'm thinking that if Lincoln City can nullify their more advanced players and sort of funnel the ball into Orient's midfield, they might actually struggle to have the creativity to break them down. So that's just my theory on that one.
Yes, and I must admit, you have kind of flagged it to me now. I'll be keeping an eye on the Orient price, because any time that teams are getting odds on to beat teams like Lincoln, I'd consider Lincoln evens double chance against most sides in the division, to be fair. So intrigued to see how that one pans out. Well, I'm down into League Two for my second selection, and I'm going to use a little bit of first-hand viewing knowledge from having watched Newport in midweek against Carlisle. Unfortunately, it was a familiar story for my lot, managing to find a way to lose. But it was a game where Carlisle, and I'm very rare I say this season, absolutely battered Newport. They really did. Newport scoring with their only shot on target in the game. Kyle Hudlin, it was a nice finish, to be fair to him, belittling some of the grief he gets about his stature and how he can't play football. It was a really nice finish. But yeah, very frustrating from a Carlisle perspective. But my main takeaway from watching that game was this Newport team, it did not look like a side sealing a fourth straight win and 5 unbeaten. And I think there has been an element of fortune in that streak. Not that they will care one jot, because it looks like a streak that has lifted them clear of relegation fears, but it does, from a betting perspective, make me very cautious of their price, because I feel like the results don't reflect the actual quality on show at the moment. And as I dig deeper into this, in their last 5 games, Newport, they have actually quite comfortably lost the XG battle in every single one and taken 13 points from 15. That is a little freakish for any sort of data nerds. To lose an XG battle and win, it is quite a regular occurrence. For that to happen 4 times in a row, it's obscene, really, and it can't last. And they come up against a Bradford side here who in a really rich vein of form, in a similar sort of way to Newport. They're not blowing teams away. They've won 5 of the last 6. 4 of them by a 1-0 scoreline, another one by a 3-0 scoreline. So they're doing it with maximum efficiency. Defensively, they look fantastic. And I think they're just setting up in a way under Graham Alexander where it's keeping a really solid base and foundation and trusting in their attacking players to manage one moment of real quality in the game, which they're doing with real efficiency. And I have my questions as to if Bradford do find their way into the playoffs in League Two, whether they're going to quite have enough to get out of the division this year. But I certainly can't fault the way that they're operating at the moment. Any team that just goes back to that sort of basic foundation of let's make ourselves really difficult to beat, I think in League Two in particular, it gives you a great chance of getting into that top 7. And they're not conceding goals. And when I add that together with a Newport team who they scored with 0.0. They beat Barrow 1-0. I think I actually backed Barrow 3 weeks ago on this show. They beat Barrow 1-0 with 0.08 worth of expected goals in the game. So they've had one shot, which wasn't a high quality shot at all, far from it, and it's gone in. Their goalkeeper, to be fair, I think Townsend, is it? Been fantastic in recent weeks. And he's, again, I'm not one massively for XG and expected saves and all that, other than giving you a base view of how the game might have panned out if you didn't happen to watch it. But I could see that in the numbers, he is performing way above average at the moment and making some fantastic saves. But that thing can't kind of last forever, I think. So to get nearly 2-1 about Bradford to win this with a shutout, another 1-0 or a 2-0 against a Newport team who aren't really creating much at all. I think it's definitely a bet for me. And I know that we've had some success with these win to nil bets in recent weeks. I'm hoping that trend can continue here.
Let's hope that's the case, Matt. Yeah, I think with Bradford City in 2025, they must be one of the form teams in English football, really. I think they've only lost to Wimbledon, and I think they drew maybe away at Barrow on New Year's Day. But other than that, I think they've won all their games, which is phenomenal, really.
Eight wins to go with those two, yeah.
8 wins, yeah, exactly. So that is phenomenal, really, for Bradford City. So, yeah, and again, I think just getting Patterson back and Zasovic has been huge for them. Really liking Bobby Poynton as well at the moment, and Callum Kavanagh with his energy up top. Richie Smallwood's in some good form. Shepherd at the back. I could go through their whole 11 at this rate, but I think, yeah, there's a real solidity about Bradford City, and they're playing with a real urgency at the moment, and they're looking like a top side to stop. And just on a sort of brief detour, Matt, that automatic promotion race in League Two is shaping up to be a corker, isn't it? Because you've got Walsall 7 points clear at the top, but beyond that, there's just 1 point separating second from sixth, and it could be any of Notts County, Doncaster Rovers, Bradford City, AFC Wimbledon, Port Vale. So, yeah, break the popcorn out for the last third of the season in League Two.
And do you know what, Gab? I said to somebody a few weeks back now, I wouldn't be surprised if Walsall have a big wobble, and they're having a bit of a wobble. I still think they'll be fine, but just the nature of how tight it is in behind means that if they do get sucked back in, they're going to be really sweating, because there's going to be so many teams breathing down their neck. So an important few weeks coming up for Walsall, I think, to just steady the ship there. But yeah, you're right. There's so many teams in there with a chance, and I'm sure that plenty will fancy their chances. And I could speak from experience with Carlisle going up a couple of years ago. God, that feels like a long time ago. That we weren't the best team in that automatic promotion race or the playoff race, but it's a lot of it, as you know, is about timing and going in a good vein of form and a good mindset. And yeah, I think the biggest weeks, quite an obvious statement, but the biggest weeks still to come, and it's going to be enjoyable to watch it as a neutral for sure. Well, we've got 2 more picks, one each, and they're both in League Two, both involving teams at the bottom end of League Two. This is a huge game for your next pick, isn't it? Morecambe versus Accrington, and Morecambe still rooted in relegation trouble. I wouldn't say Accrington are completely out of the woods yet either. You're going for Andy Dallas, who has been a revelation since arriving at Morecambe, I think it's fair to say, to score, and Morecambe to get what would be a massive win. This is 9-2, a massive price. Talk me through it.
Well, do you know what it is, Matt? I've gone with the double chance picks for my first 2. I've gone nice and safe.
That's
and
it.
I'm feeling, I've had my
So
main
you've built
course.
up some credits to have a nice dessert.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've had my main course, my safe, sensible bets, so I can have my dessert, a bit of a flutter on a bigger shot. That's what
I like it. Good discipline.
I think Morecambe, I think they've been massively different since Andy Dallas and Callum Cook came into the team. I mean, it's great that there were enough funds, first of all, provided for Morecambe to just bring in those last 2 players in the window, because I think they're going to make all the difference. Callum Cook, because he's very good at looking after the ball in tight areas. He's turned Morecambe from being a team that gets into the final third a lot because of the sort of huff and puff side of things and the effort they put in, to actually looking after it a bit more in the final third and creating real chances. And then Andy Dallas, he got 2 in their 4-2 victory over Fleetwood, and I think that might have been his debut. I think he scored goals before in the National League with Solihull North. He's obviously played for Barnsley, so he's got a little bit of pedigree there, and a massive improvement on anything Morecambe have had otherwise up top this season. And I do think that it's the kind of thing where they've had balls flashing across the face of goal, and I think Dallas is the kind of player that might just be able to get on the end of some of those. So that's kind of my thinking. I think he could be a game changer for Morecambe and Derek Adams. And also, since Dallas and Cook came in, they beat Fleetwood 4-2, as I mentioned. They lost at Newport, but they had 2-1. But I think they had 27 shots in that game. So it was very unlucky. And they
further backing up my point about Newport perhaps being on the side of fortune recently.
Exactly, yeah. So that sort of slots in quite nicely. And then the other one was a 2-0 loss at Notts County, where they didn't disgrace themselves, but they're facing a very reliable Magpie side. So actually, the last 3 games since Cook and Dallas came in gives me a lot of encouragement that those 2 players are going to improve Morecambe. So yeah, for me, Andy Dallas is going to get among the goals this weekend, and I think Morecambe are going to get a crucial derby victory.
Yeah, certainly would be a crucial one, wouldn't it? It's a massive game for all concerned and the teams around them as well, one of which is involved in my last pick. It's 2 teams that I've discussed quite a lot this year on this show. And call me an idiot, I'm keeping the faith with Scott Lindsay and MK Dons here. The big price, I just thought,
That
to
is
beat
huge, to be
Tranmere
fair. Yeah.
2-1. This is a Tranmere side in absolute free fall, as we've discussed at length, as you you wrote a column a couple of weeks ago flagging them as a serious contender for relegation from League Two. And I think that will be a surprise to anyone that maybe takes only a passing interest in League Two, but to anyone that's been really following Tranmere at all closely in the last few months, the club is in a real mess. I know you touched on it in your column, Gab, but for anyone that didn't manage to read that, obviously Nigel Adkins still in charge at the moment. A very likeable guy, a nice bloke, no doubt. Hard to dislike him, but results simply have not been good enough for Rovers for several months now, and yet there's no sign of Adkins losing his job. In fact, the owners have since come out and publicly backed him, saying that they believe he's the man to turn it around and they don't want to be making a change. So it would look at the time of writing like he's going to get until the end of the season to try and keep Tranmere up, which is, if I'm a Tranmere fan, worrying. If I'm a Carlisle fan, encouraging, to be honest. But yeah, I take no pleasure in seeing a club of Tranmere's stature struggling like this, and it really is struggling. Now they got a draw in midweek, but I don't want to overplay that draw. I don't think it was a particularly fantastic performance that got them the draw. It was just kind of, they found a way to get a result. But if you go back and look at their last sort of 8 to 10 performances, there's basically no attacking threat. The goals they're giving away are really soft and sloppy. So I'm always open-minded at the moment to taking Tranmere on from a betting perspective and getting with their opponents. Now we're getting some serious juice about MK Dons because they're in a bad spot themselves. They're not playing particularly well, although you wouldn't think it if you listen to Scott Lindsay's interview ahead of this game with Tranmere. He said that there's been fantastic performances in the last couple of weeks, which I know that Dons fans wouldn't agree with. A lot of possession, which is a familiar theme that we hear with teams in this day and age, having all the ball and not doing a lot with it. But Lindsay, I was reading between the lines of his comments, and I think he is actually genuinely really encouraged with, it seems like the messages he's trying to get across to his side are starting to come through, even if that's not quite bearing fruit in terms of results at the moment. He seemed a lot more encouraged by things than his interviewer, I thought. And he made some interesting remarks about trying to completely reset the culture at the club. And he tried to do it the day after the transfer window shut, talked about having a meeting with the players and the owner and all the staff, and coming out of it in really good shape. Now, they lost 2-1 at Barrow in midweek, 2 defensive lapses, one of them being from a corner as well. But they got ahead in that game. They should have scored a second. Alex Gilby hit the post when it looked easier to score, to be honest. So not sure that 2-1 was necessarily reflective, certainly reflective of how things have been going for them. MK Dons at the moment, I've got them in my head as a team that they've stung me this year from a betting perspective. But I do have faith in Lindsay to get to the bottom of it and sort it out. I think, he's proven track record in this division, knows exactly what he wants to achieve. And he even said it in his briefing this week. It may take a little bit longer for the results to match up with where we want to be. It might be a bit of a long-term thing. But then he also said, I'm not a loser and I don't like losing. And we do have to find a way of winning these games, even though we're controlling them. When I put that all together and I consider who they're playing, I think 2-1's a massive price for MK Dons finding a win here. They're probably only going to need to find one piece of quality, which they have been doing in most of their games, but they've been giving goals away. Well, this Tranmere side don't have any kind of, fill me with any kind of confidence going forward at the moment. I add all the pieces together. I'm not a massive lover of where MK Dons are right now, but I'm a massive lover of them 2-1 away at Tranmere.
Yeah, no, do you know what? My initial reaction was when you said you're going with MK Dons, was a bit with their form, but actually considering that they are playing at Prenton Park, and I almost wonder if the fact that it's at Prenton Park, where the atmosphere is possibly going to be sort of get quite
nasty,
restless.
toxic.
Certainly restless. And whether I think that could actually work in MK Dons' favour, because I think MK Dons only have to be 6 out of 10 for their standards this weekend to get the win, because they've got, I think, a top 3 squad on paper. It hasn't materialised that way on the pitch, but Scott Lindsay only has to find some of the solutions this week to get the victory, because Tranmere Rovers are that bad. So I think 2-1. I'm amazed at Tranmere. I mean, 2-1. Normally, when one team's 2-1, the other team's 13-10 or something like that.
Yes, I think Tranmere are 6-5 favourites. I might be right in saying, but I will check that. But, I mean,
I don't understand.
I've got to say, anybody that's back in Tranmere at that price, I think needs the head examining. I'm sorry, but and I might be proved wrong there, but 6-4 they are now, Tranmere, and there is a little bit of money coming for MK Dons as we speak. There is a sea of blue on odds checker, but for me, I don't think there's going to be many situations between now and May where I'm going to want to be with MK Dons. But this is one of them. And I think in the long run, like I say, I do have faith in Scott Lindsay to bed it in. I think they've got the quality there. They've got the right man there. And if they could just have a bit of patience with him, because I know it's frustrating myself when you've had 75% possession and you're getting beat. You think, well, it's no good having this possession if we're getting beat. But this is a man with a proven track record. He knows what he wants to achieve. He's been given the tools to achieve the success. And some of the players they brought in January, they've only been there weeks. Crowley, Orsi, all these guys who are proven at this level to be some of the best players at this level. Once they're bedded in and playing the way he wants to play, I really do think if they go again next year, there'll be a real proposition in this league, and maybe I'll get stung twice with them in consecutive seasons. But that's the bet this weekend for me anyway. 2-1 MK Dons away at a hapless Tranmere side. Well, we'll move on to summarising our bets. If I go to pull yours up first, Gab, I ask you this every week: do you have a nap? And I will tell you which of yours is my favourite as well.
I'm going to make my nap Plymouth double chance at Blackburn.
And I'm going to match you there. I think that's a great price when you consider where the two teams are at in the last week or two. And it's not very often you'd be rushing to get with Plymouth this year, but this is one of those occasions, I think. Similar comments apply to my picks. As I just said, MK Dons is not very often I've been rushing to get with MK Dons, but I do think 2-1 away at Tranmere just looks massive to me.
I'd probably go for Bradford Winter-Nil versus Newport as my favourite from your selections at 15-8.
Yes, like that one as well. I'm feeling confident this week, but I blanked last week, so I'm just going to keep my powder dry, not say any more. I hope you enjoyed this week's EFL Betting Show. Do let us know what you're backing this weekend in the EFL on the comments. Our tipster on oddsnow.com, Adam Drury, is in fantastic form. He's had 4 winners in the last 5 weeks on his EFL accumulator, so go and check that out. He's got a 20-1 offering for you this week. And we'll be back next week for more EFL action on Odds Now. See you again very soon.